if you can start, that would be great.
Awesome, great. So I have been working on Upwork for about a year now, but uh, the Google Tag Manager things, it has been for me for like more than 2 years now. So I'm not sure how we are going to conduct this session because it usually depends what kind of team we are dealing with. I was told that this is more like a digital marketing team and we will be only looking at the Google Analytics 4 aspects. So I think that we will not be more concerned on how we can implement the events rather than we will be more concerned on how we can view different reports or where we can find the data and what kind of things are different in Universal Analytics than GA4. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
will just
believe.
bring your
I believe this is a great, is a good strategy. Of course, there are here as well people from our media team, which probably will have to you a sort of questionnaire regarding events and regarding how different it is in terms of Universal Analytics versus G4. But yeah, Mateus, which is our dev, he's probably going to have quite a few for you. But at least at this stage, if you can show us exactly this reporting and the differences between the regular to the G4, that would be great.
All right. So the team has already been working with Universal Analytics, and I think that they are more comfortable with Universal Analytics. So have you guys already started working with GA4 or nothing has been implemented on GA4 right now?
I believe Mateus can tell you more, but he has actually worked in quite a few accounts already, if not all the ones that we have migrating or starting off in G4. But just to be concise, Mateus, how many accounts are left that has not been created the G4 yet?
Hello there. Basically, I duplicated the universal tags and switched for the GA4 property within the same triggering and same infos. The remaining accounts are the ones that I noticed that we still don't have the permission to create a GA4 property. And if I have to put a number, I think there is a 7 or 8 more or less, which I already created a task for the corresponding CS. And yeah, basically this is the for now. It's not the migration itself, but it's a start to keep collecting data since right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So what we can do is that we can focus this particular session only on Google Analytics 4. We can see what are the differences and how you can navigate in GA4 and look at different reports. And if we need, I think if we need, we can schedule another session for implementation, like how we can track e-commerce data and things like that. However, if you are familiar with that, I think this one should be enough for everything.
Okay.
All right. Great. We will be going over a slide so that it will be easier for all of us to follow. I will share a link for this one in the chat. So if you want to have a look at it side by side, you can have a look at that. Great. So as we discussed, this one is only going to be discussing that how we can implement Google Tag Manager, but we will only be discussing how we navigate around Google Analytics 4 on this. I already told you about myself. My name is Hassan, and I have been working on Upwork on implementing Google Analytics 4 and migrating different tags from Universal Analytics or implementing Facebook Pixel. However, I have been working with Google Analytics 4 for about 1 year now, so I understand how the reporting works and how we capture different data and how we can visualize the reports in Google Analytics 4. This session is supposed to be 90 minutes, so we will try to cover all these topics. We are going to do a basic introduction of Google Analytics 4, look at the differences between GA4 and Universal Analytics. Then we will see how the interface is different from Google Analytics. And then we will have a look at reporting. The main thing in Google Analytics is understanding how custom reports works. So I will I will probably like to spend more time on custom reports because that is where most of the time of your digital marketing team will be spending. And then maybe we can have an answer question session at the end of the session. Maybe we will give 30 minutes for the answer question and 1 hour for the training session. If anyone has any question or if they want to change the structure, they can ask. All right, so you can click on this link on your slides, or it will take you to the demo stores. Once you will go to the demo store, you can find links to the official Google's merchandise store for Universal Analytics and GA4. You can scroll down to get the links from here. So this is the Universal Analytics store, which is collecting all the data from Google Merchandise Store, and this is the GA4 property that they have implemented on the same store. So we will be looking at the data comparison between these two properties, and we will see how things have been implemented differently and what kind of metrics are different in Universal Analytics and GA4. All right. Okay, so why we need a Google Analytics 4 property? This is the first question that we usually ask. However, we don't have an option right now because Google Analytics is going to be disappear after 1 year. So we will not be able to process any data that is coming into Universal Analytics. So we have to implement a Google Analytics 4 property. And the main benefit of working with Google Analytics 4 is that we can use one single property for tracking mobile users as well as website users. However, in Universal Analytics, we did not have this option. We can only track one kind of users, and we were using Google Firebase to track mobile applications and then merging the data in BigQuery or something else. However, when working with Google Analytics 4, we can track both the mobile application and web application. And this one is more focused on users' privacy and machine learning systems. So, and they say that it is more seamless integration with Google Ads and other platforms. However, Google Analytics 4 is highly under building things. So we cannot really switch to GA4. However, it is better that if we can implement GA4 side by side with Universal Analytics and still use Universal Analytics for the time being. And once the GA4 is completely ready, we can switch to it maybe after 2 or 3 months or maybe 6 months. So right now, GA4 is still under building. It does not have all the features that Universal Analytics had. You might also see that in Universal Analytics, we had more than 40 different reports. However, in Universal Analytics, we only are left with 11 different reports, and we don't have much customization around the built-in reports. Therefore, it is important to understand how we can build custom reports, so we can build any kind of reports that we want or that we were used to working with in Universal Analytics. All right, so the main differences between Google Analytics and GA4. This is a little bit theoretical because the fundamental difference between both of these properties is that how they are collecting data and how they have changed their data collection model. And depending on these, therefore, the different reporting system exists. And the UI of GA4 is also different. This is a better one than Universal Analytics. It looks like an old one, just a user preference, nothing else. All right, so in Universal Analytics, you might remember that under the admin section, you had options to create custom dimensions. And once you were creating any custom dimension, you had a different hits type. So you can create dimension based on uh, session hit, uh, products hit, e-commerce hit, or different kind of hits based on what kind of action you want to track on a particular website. However, in GA4, everything is event-based. So we don't have any kind of hit model as per se in Google Analytics. So anything that is being tracked in Google Analytics 4, that is an event. Page view is an event, session start is an event, first session is an event. Everything in Google Analytics 4 is an event. Therefore, the data model in Google Analytics 4 it highly relies on event model structure. However, in Universal Analytics, we had different kind of models. Whether we can send anything as a session, hit, user, or a different scope. So the main difference between both of these is that it is event model, and therefore you need to understand that when you are working with Google Analytics 4, you need to make sure that you rethink how you have implemented the events in Google Analytics in universal analytics. So in GA4, you have more flexibility in order to implement different events for a GA4. So just bear in mind that the main difference between these two is the data model is entirely different. So yeah, I think we should just take the slide. Page views and screens. These are also measured differently. In universal analytics, whenever a configuration tag fired on the website, that is when the page view event usually fires. However, in universal analytics, we have to specifically fire an event. You might remember that we need a configuration tag and then we need an event type page view. However, in Google Analytics 4, that is not the case. Whenever a user lands on the website, we fire a page view event and it automatically is tracked inside GA4. So if a user logs, open the mobile application or visit any page of your website, the session will automatically start to be, the session will automatically start and the page view events will already be coming into GA4. There is one more difference between the reporting API of Google Analytics. The GA4 works on a different real-time API than Universal Analytics. In UA, you have the options of looking at the active users numbers, like the number of users that are active on the website. However, the number changes based on how many users are there and what if you have altered the amount of the session time. You do get the option to change the session time in Google Analytics 4. You can go to admin and then go to the data stream and then change how long you want the session to be. By default, the session time is set to 30 minutes. However, you can update the session time to whatever you want. You can go to more tagging settings. And this is where you are going to configure any kind of cross-domain tracking for your website, any kind of filters that you might want it to add, or any kind of session timing that you wanted to add. So by default, the session time is 30 minutes. However, you can change this time to however you want. There is one more major difference that in Universal Analytics, we used to have bounce rate, but in GA4, the bounce rate does not exist, because in universal analytics, bounce rate is when the user land on the website but they don't take any interactive action on the website. You might remember that there were two kind of different hits. One is an interactive hit and then the other one is a non-interactive hit. So any session which does not have an interactive hit, that is called a session with 100% bounce rate. However, in GA4, we don't this session hit does not exist as per se. So everything is as an event. So whenever the user lands on the website, the event automatically starts firing. So in this case, the bounce rate does not exist. However, an equivalent to bounce rate is engagement time. So that depends on how many events the user has made on the website and how long they has stayed active on the website. So this is how, this is also one of the major differences between Universal Analytics and GA4. That was the sessions. Creating dimensions and matrices is also different. In Universal Analytics, everything was under admin section. However, in Universal Analytics, most of the settings that you need to do on the GA4 account, they are done through the configure section. You can go to configure and then you can navigate to custom definitions. And here you can create any kind of dimension or any kind of custom metrics that you want. Bear in mind that there are only two kind of scopes when working with Universal Analytics. One is, working with GA4. One is event scope, and then the other one is a user scope. Event scope is anything that you want to send with a particular event. However, user scope is anything that you want to send with a particular user. So let's say a user visits your website and it is a blogging website where they can read different kind of blogs. So when they view a different blog, you want to send some information back to GA4, like what is the author ID of that blog, what is the title ID, what is the post ID. So you can create different custom dimensions for events and send that information back to GA4, and you can review which particular blog is being viewed the most, which author is being viewed the most, and stuff like that. However, user properties are similar to based on a particular user. So you can attach a user ID to a user, or you can attach a particular language to a particular user, and you will see the user properties attached to all the events. So the custom dimensions are simply event properties that are attached either to a particular user or to a particular event. You can add custom dimension in any report. if you are viewing any report on your website on your Google Analytics 4, and let's say you have an event selected, unlike Universal Analytics where you had the option to add a secondary dimension. Let me open the report here. All right, so in GA4, you have this plus button where you can add a secondary dimension. So anything that is under the user's property, you can add them through here. However, if you want to add any custom event scope, these are all the custom variables that has been created into GA4, and these are all the users parameter that has been created here. So you can add any additional details here that you want. It is very similar to how secondary dimensions used to work in Universal Analytics. Content grouping is similar, however, it does not affect how Google Analytics 4 and Universal Analytics are different. It is just how the implementation has been different. So in Google Analytics 4, this is more like how you implement content grouping in Google Tag Manager. So you can have different page views under, let's say, men's t-shirt, and you want to group all of those events under one content. So you can do that by sending a content group of, let's say, men underscore t-shirt. So in Google Analytics 4, you can see that you can create a custom dimension for content grouping, and then you can have a look at all those information coming into here. So you can create a content grouping custom dimension, and you can filter that report here. The user ID and the client ID, these are two important things, because in Google Analytics 4, we can measure cross device and cross device users data. For example, if the user is using mobile application and they are visiting the same website through their web browser, you can actually link both of those two sessions by providing a user ID to that user. By default, if you have not implemented any kind of user ID, the Google Analytics will provide a client ID, which is very similar to how the cookie of Universal Analytics used to work. So the cookie that we used to have for Universal Analytics, it is very similar to how the client ID of GA4 works. So if you will not implement your own user ID to a particular user, the client ID will be the default user ID that will be attached to each user. A user ID is something that we can provide to each user when they sign into the website or sign up to a website. For example, if a user makes a purchase to your website and they go to the checkout page, you can access the customer ID of that particular user and send it back to Google Analytics 4. So if that user logs in to your website through a mobile application or through any other different device, Google Analytics 4 is capable of linking both of those sessions or all of those different sessions into one big session, and you can see all the reports of that under by building the custom reports. You might remember that in Universal Analytics, we used to create a different view. So you can go to admin settings, and under view, you have to accept the permissions for creating a user session, and then you will create a view for that particular user. And you might have two different views. One is the master view, and then the other one is user ID view, where you will see all the information of that particular user and how many events they are firing. The similar thing we have in here is called user explorer reports. You can either build an explorer report through the template gallery, or you can build your own reports. It's completely up to you. Let's see, where is the explorer report? So the user explorer report, it is important to see if a user is doing a particular event on your website. I don't think they provide us the access to that. Yeah, it's all right, but you get the idea. You can build a similar report for each users. Let me see if I can open a different account where we have already implemented the user ID for a client. By default, Google Analytics 4 does not collect any users data like Universal Analytics used to do. For example, when a Google Analytics 4 tag fire on a website, it does not sniff any kind of email address, first name or last name of the user. So the other option that we used to have is called server-side tracking. So when we are implemented Google Analytics 4 through the server, we can actually send users exact information such as phone number, email address, first name and last name back to Google Analytics 4. And all the information will be hashed. We won't be able to see that here, but Google Analytics 4 will know that which particular user came to the website, and it can actually uh, match that data with the database and build a particular report for that. So for this client, all these one which starts with a number and has a dot in it, these are the client IDs that are generated by GA4. These are when we don't we don't provide a user ID back to Google Analytics 4. However, these are the Firebase IDs. So if the user logs into the website, we are creating a Firebase ID and providing it back to GA4. So it captures all the different events of that user and link them to one particular report, and we can see what the user is doing. If they have uh, implemented a particular session, we can import this data to any other platform such as BigQuery and have machine learning algorithms run on that based on to predict particular conversions and things like that. So yeah, the user ID is important if we want to see cross-device data of the same user. So this really helps in understanding Google Analytics for what kind of user behaviors are happening on your website. Then we have parameters. Parameters are very similar to how we had dimensions in Universal Analytics. Anything that is attached to a particular event, that is called a parameter. In Universal Analytics, you might remember that when an event is sent back to UA, it is divided into three things. One is category, then action, and then label. So each event has three different things. They are basically divided into category, actions, and label. However, in Google Analytics 4, this particular analogy does not make much sense because everything is an event, and each event can have up to 25 different parameters that you can send back to that particular event. So you are not limited to just sending these three parameters like event, action, category, and label. You can actually send more than three parameters that you want to send back to GA4. Like we discussed, for a blog website, you can send a blog ID, blog title, author ID, and any kind of information that you actually want to see in Google Analytics 4 reports. You can send that information to GA4. It has to be just less than 25 numbers. You cannot send more than 25 parameters with each event. E-commerce ones are different. E-commerce ones already have 7 built-in parameters that you can use. You can check the documentations of GA4 to see what kind of parameters you are allowed to send for e-commerce data. Uh, the structure is also different for e-commerce. In previously Universal Analytics, you might remember that there is an action field and then everything is under products. However, in Universal Analytics in GA4, this is more streamlined. Everything is under e-commerce, and then these are just all the events data is under items, and all the other information is inside the e-commerce object. So these are the default ones. You cannot override these parameters. Right now, they say that if you will send items with any event, it will be counted as enhanced e-commerce ones, but it does not work right now. You have to send the same event name. So in order for an event to be enhanced e-commerce, you need to make sure that the name of the event is matching with the documentation and it has all the required parameters with it. So if you will send items and you will not send the name purchase, rather than maybe you are sending transaction, it will not register as it will not register as a enhanced e-commerce event. It will be registered as a normal event, and you won't be able to see what kind of items parameters were sent back to GA4. So make sure that when you are implementing enhanced e-commerce tracking, you make sure you are sticking to this documentation right now. We discussed the user property. The main benefit of user property is simply looking at the same user data across different devices. And it can help not only us, but it can help Google Analytics understand what are the user behaviors and how it is behaving across different websites. So it can enhance itself to retarget more audiences if you are using the same data in Google Ads. One more cool feature about Google Analytics 4 is event batching. So event batch is similar to how Google Analytics 4 is sending multiple events in the same hit. This is useful in terms of implementing server-side tracking because we are charged on how much bandwidth we are using when we are working with server-side tracking. So if you are sending, let's say, 10 different events and it is creating 10 different hits on the server, then it will count as 10 different requests. However, what event batching does is that it will merge all the events into one request and then send it back to GA4. So in GA4, you will still see all of them as different events, but how they are coming inside to GA4 is that they are using less bandwidth and less interactive hits from the user itself. And let's say a user did an event on this page, however, the Google Analytics 4 did not have much time to fire that event, and the user has already visited another page. So the event, it's not like Universal Analytics where the event is missed. What Google Analytics 4 will do is that it will fire the event on the next page. So you might see that there is a difference of page title in some cases where the event is firing for the form submission events. So let's say user submits a form and you are trying to trigger an event for GA4. Event fires, but when the event fires, the user is already on the next page. So in your reports, you might see that for some users, the event is firing on the form submission page. However, for some user, it is firing on the thank you page. So you just bear in mind that GA4 always fire the event no matter if the user is on the website. And for mobile application, it is a little different. So if for any reason user does an activity on your mobile application and the event does not fire, maybe their device is disconnected from the internet. So what Google Analytics 4 will do is that whenever the user will get the internet back, it will send the data back to GA4. So it is possible that the action happened 48 hours ago and the event will still be recorded until there is a 72 hours window by which any event that is coming into GA4 will be recorded. So this is also one of the reasons number of sessions is different in Universal Analytics and GA4. Universal Analytics can record more sessions because it has a larger window of 72 hours where late events can also be processed in GA4. However, Universal Analytics does not process any late event that is sent back to GA4. So just bear in mind that the total number of users can be different by a slight number of amount, and the total number of sessions can be different between GA4 and Universal Analytics. In GA4, you cannot see the total number of active users on your website anymore. It will only show you the last 30 minutes users and what they are doing on your website. If anyone has any questions, they can ask.
So good so far.
I have, but so far I think I'm gonna stay them for the end because I really feel.
Matheus, it's difficult to understand you so far through your voice.
I'm sorry. So far here I have a bunch of questions, but the main ones would be like, for example, I'm a bit nervous. About server-side tagging, how can I, for example, guarantee that it will reach the GA4 if the application is like running not only on GA4, but the app uses also the Firebase as some kind of middleware for the user activity and GA4 property.
You can always test the events using the debug view. So if you have a Google Tag Manager container connected to your web property on a website, you can go to configure and hit debug view. This is where all of the events that you are seeing from the website are coming in. It does not matter if the event is coming through a Google Tag Manager web container or a Google Tag Manager server container, the event will always be received inside the debug view. You can select any of your device which is connected to the website. Right now, there are quite a lot of devices connected to this one. But yeah, if you are working on a mobile application, you can manually add a parameter called debug and set it to true. And when the debug event will come to the Google Analytics, this is the one debug mode. You can set it to 1. And what this will do is that it will report that particular event inside the debug view. So if the event shows up here, then that means the event is working fine. If the event does not show up here, that means there is some kind of delay or the event is not working properly. You cannot rely on the real-time reporting because the real-time reporting does not properly work with the debug view. And you can also add an ignore flag inside the particular request. So what that will do is that it will not record that request inside the actual reporting. That will only be working in the debug view. So yeah, when you're working with server-side tracking, just make sure that you are inside the debug view and you have the debug mode either manually set to 1 or it will be by default set to 1 if you are working with the debug mode of Google Tag Manager. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Another one about Google Server tagging. Um, can I do the server tagging inside a subdomain instead of Google Cloud?
Yes. Subdomain, I'm not really sure because I have worked with two different hosting services right now. One is Google Cloud Products, and then the other one is Stave. I like working with Stave is the reason because when a Google Tag Manager request fires on any website, let me see if we have Google Tag Manager anywhere. Yeah. So by default, when the request fires, it sends a request to www.googletagmanager.com. However, with Stave, we can route this request to the custom subdomain. So yes, we do have the option of implementing the custom subdomain in Google Cloud Product as well as Stave. However, I'm not sure if you are hosting your own container on your own domain, how would that work? I'm not sure how the server side container actually runs on the server, but yeah, you can use one of these services to make sure that the server always is running and, and make sure
Okay.
the events are firing. Yes.
Okay. One more question so far, and I promise I'll save the others to the end. Um,
No, it's all right. You can ask me.
thank you. Do we need to have like different GA4 properties for a main website, a main domain, and a different property for any other subdomain that that specific domain has? For example, if I have I don't know, mydomain.com, and then I also have blog.mydomain.com. Should I have only one GA4 property or two properties for each one, like one for
First
each
page.
realm?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of data you are trying to track. If both the website, the domain and the subdomain are completely different businesses, let's say the domain is like a blog website and subdomain is like your store, and both of them are on completely different niches. One is based on maybe dog caring, and then the other one is on gardening. And then it does not make sense that you are sending the information back to one Google Analytics 4 property. So you should have two different properties. However, if both of them are the same businesses, like that is also your main website, but then you have configured the checkout system.
Awesome.
So definitely create multiple streams. If you want to track two different subdomains, you can use one data stream and use the same ID to track all the different domains and subdomain as long as they are same business and you want to see the same data inside here. So for this particular client, we have three different domains right now. One is enhanza.com, then there is sport.enhanza.com, and then there is the main website, which is app.enhanza.com. So all the three ones are sending data to this particular data stream. You might actually see a warning if you will try to create another web stream. It will say that you don't need another web stream. You can actually use one data stream to track all the information. One more thing, be careful that you don't delete any data stream because it does not give you any warning and it just deletes the data stream. By deleting the data stream, it also deletes all the data that you have already recorded in any Google Analytics 4 property. So make sure that you are using one stream if it is one business and use different accounts if they are different businesses. However, for working with apps, you have to use different stream for different application, even though if they are on the same businesses. So if you have one Android application and one iOS application, or maybe two different games that you want to track data, then you have to create two different streams for iOS. But web, you can just work with one data stream. Does that answer your questions?
Yes. And sorry, just one more. What if I add an application, like a mobile application? Should I have a different property too, or uh, like can I use the same with a different web stream?
You should, if the application is belonging to the same system as the new data stream, you don't need to create a different Google Analytics 4 property. As we discussed in the beginning, the main benefit of working with Google Analytics 4 is that you can use the same property to track websites as well as applications. So you will have all the information about that particular user here. So you can create a data stream for all the Android application and Apple iOS application if they belong to the same website or the same business. You don't need to create anything else.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Sure. And anything that you are tracking for Android application, it will appear under screens. I think I missed that point when we were here. So page views are specific to web applications that are running on the websites, and anything that is in the screen views, these are for uh, Android application. So Android, if a page view happens on an Android application, that will be counted as a screen view. However, page view is for mobile application. Just give me 1 second. All right. Anyone else has any questions?
Yes, I have. For example, Universe Analytics, we can have different ways to register a conversion, for example, destination page.
Yeah.
But how GA4 can be more specific about the results we can register? Because we know that the platforms register conversions, but how it works? Because you say that we can register different conversions on GA4. You believe that GA4 will be able to bring more um, data, more specific, more correct or not?
Let me rephrase the question. So, is this question more about how the conversion works, how we can configure a particular conversion, or
Yes, exactly.
okay, so in Universal Analytics, you can create each conversion is called a goal, and you can have four different kind of goals. Either it can be
Mm-hmm.
page view, based on page views, events, transaction, e-commerce, and anything that is any information that you have on your website, you can build a goal out of that. However, in Universal Analytics, in GA4, we don't have anything called
Mm-hmm.
uh, and everything is an event. So any conversion that you want to make, that can be configured by just simply toggling a button on and off. So let's say if you want to make begin checkout a conversion, you can just simply mark it as a conversion, and then it will start counting
Ah,
that
okay.
event as a conversion. And let's say you want you don't want to use a default event as a conversion, you want your own specific event. Let's say you want a particular page view to be a conversion. So what you can do is that you can create a specific event for that. So to create a specific event from an existing event, you can hit create event, and it will ask you that what is the particular event that you want to create. You can hit create, and then let's say you want a particular page view as an event, and that page is a thank you page. So the event name is page view,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can add one more condition into that, that is page title or maybe page location. And page location is the URL. You can mark it as if it contains thank you, then this will be a new event, and you will start seeing this thank you event under your main events. I don't want that, so I'm not going to save the changes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
once you will create a new event, it will start appearing here, and you can just check it as a conversion, and then you can see that event under your conversion tabs here. Google Analytics 4 has a separate reporting under reports for conversions, and you can see more information about that particular conversion there. If you don't want to see any conversion anymore, you can turn it off. By default, purchase is a conversion. You cannot turn it off, and the conversion will only start tracking information once the conversion has been marked. So it will not track any
Mm-hmm.
information that was previously recorded by Google Analytics 4. So you have to mark a particular event as a conversion, and then it will start tracking that conversion, that event's data. All right. Does that
Okay.
answer your
Okay.
question?
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else has any questions?
I think.
If you do find any question, you can also type that in the chat box, and I will see that if there are any questions, we can answer there. All right. I think we should do one. We have around 45 minutes more. So what we can do is that we can see where you can find different reportings in Google Analytics 4 as a general overview, and then we can spend around 10 or 20 minutes looking at some custom reports and how we can use them. Right. By default, when you will open your Google Analytics 4 property, and if it has been tracking some data, then you will see a similar page to this one. However, if you have implemented GA4 brand new and it does not has any kind of data in it, then you will see a message that how you can implement your GA4. You can ask your developer to implement that, and it will work fine. By default, it shows you all the recently viewed report. So this is all the action that you have taken on your website. You can click on anything and it is like a quick navigational bar for you. However, all the reports are actually here on the left side. These are insights. These are based on the machine learning algorithm of Google Analytics 4. These are the things that it thinks are better for you, or these are the things that you should know about your analytics. You can click on View All Insights, or you can click on this Insight button to have a more detailed look on what kind of things it is mentioning. These are just reports. Sometimes it's also recommend some kind of audiences that you should have and things like that. I think maybe we should start from the configure tab and then go to the reporting section. All right. So the first thing, as I mentioned, that any kind of cross-domain tracking that you want to do, because these are the things that are important to us as digital marketers. That the first thing is that the session should always remain same. If you have two different checkout systems, or if the user is going to PayPal or any other website, you need to make sure that you exclude the PayPal, Stripe, or your own domains from being tracked as a referral. So what you can do is that you can go to admin, go to data streams, and then select the data stream from where the event is coming in, and then you can go at the bottom of the screen where it says more tagging settings. Once you will click on more tagging settings, it is very similar to how we configure how we removed the referrals from Universal Analytics. However, it was just under different option. It was under settings, and then property settings, and then uh, tracking info, and referral exclusion list. So if you don't want to see any particular domain, you will add that here. Similar to in GA4, if you don't want to see any domain inside your website, you will add that under list unwanted referrals. So you want to add any payment gateway that you have, like PayPal, Stripe, or any other your own website, you want to add that here. And if you want to define your internal traffic, let's say you are working with affiliate programs and you don't want a particular website to be tracked here, so you will add the internal traffic here. You can also exclude your particular users from here. Uh, this is similar to how filters works in Universal Analytics, where you can exclude a particular IP address. So you can exclude any kind of IP address from internal traffic. And configuring your domain, this is where your cross domain tracking works. So if you want to add your domain and all the subdomains, you can use the regular expression mark, or you can manually add all the domains that you want to be configured as your own website. So this is how the cross domain tracking works in GA4. In Universal Analytics, we have to do that through code. The developer has to do that, or you have to go through Google Tag Manager in order to make sure the cross-domain tracking is working in Universal Analytics. However, in GA4, you can manage all the universal and all the cross-domain tracking yourself by just going to the admin section and more tagging settings. All right. One more thing is that you should make sure that your website, your GA4 property is not connected with your Universal Analytics property, because you don't want any of the events to be tracked multiple times. That means if you are configuring Universal Analytics from your Google Tag Manager container, and you have also configured Google Analytics 4 in Google Tag Manager container, then make sure that you have disconnected both of your properties. So any event that is going into Universal Analytics will not be coming in from the GA4 too. So all the events will be tracked separately. I think you do have an option here. It's called, manage site, connected site. So if you want to connect, you can enter Universal Analytics ID here, give it a name, and then hit connect. Or you can go to your Universal Analytics or hit setup assistant. This is where you can also see any account that is connected to your Google Analytics 4. I think it's more easier to see on Universal Analytics. You can go to UA and just simply disconnect any kind of a GA4 property that is connected to your website. Okay. The second thing is ad collection. So if you want to connect your Google Analytics 4 account with your Google Ads account, you need to make sure you have done two things. I think I did not address the Google Signals here. All right. Anyways, you need to make sure that you can add your ad account just by going to the Google Ads account and hit link, and then it will ask you that what account do you want to link, and you can simply select the account that you want to link. But before Google Analytics 4 is allowed to share any data with your Google Ads, you need to make sure that you give all the data collection and retention acknowledgement back to GA4. So you need to check all of these options and hit I acknowledge before GA4 will actually start communicating with Google Ads account. So any audiences that you are going to make with GA4 right now, they are not working perfectly uh, as we are speaking right now. So any kind of audiences that you want to create from GA4, I highly recommend work with Universal Analytics. However, just create audiences with GA4 right now. So once GA4 is working fine, you will actually be uh, remarket the audiences from GA4 uh, custom audiences. In order to create custom audiences in Google Analytics 4, you can hit configure. Uh, any custom audiences that you want to make, they are under the audiences tab, and you have a lot more options to create an audience, unlike universal analytics. In universal analytics, you have, if you have to create audiences, you have to go to admin section and then click on custom audience definition and then configure your audiences. Similarly, in GA4 you can go to configure audiences and then hit new audiences. In GA4, you have a lot of options that how you want to create audiences, because you have access to an event and you have access to all the parameters of that particular event. So what you can do is that you can include all the users who has done any event on your website, or you can use any user based on their demographic or anything that you want to see. So usually how we like to configure events are based on events parameters. So let's say if you want to create an audience who has clicked on the phone button on your website. So you will click on phone, and now you can also narrow it down based on any event parameter that you are sending with this event. So right now I am sending C action, C category, label, value, and all of these things back to GA4. So I can either narrow down this event, or I can just leave it blank. So it will create an audience based on these users. So right now it says that there are 9 users who has clicked on the phone button in the last 30 days. You can set the limit to maximum, and then it will look at the data since the creation of this GA4 property. You can rename the audience to anything that you want, and then you can hit save. And similar thing with conversions. Audiences will only record the data once they have been created. So they will not record any user segment before they were created in GA4. So this is where you create audiences. We have already discussed how we can create custom dimensions and custom matrices. You can hit on create custom dimension, name anything that you want, provide a description, and then tell it that which particular parameter you want the dimension to match to. Usually we like to name the same thing for dimension as well as the event parameter. We have, I think, only 25 or 50 different custom dimensions right now. Hopefully they will increase it, but right now we only have access to 25 different custom dimensions. So you don't want to create uh, a lot more custom dimension that you cannot use. Maybe create 3 or 4 generic ones that you can use with all the events, and then use those custom definitions inside all of your events data. Uh, let's look at reporting, and then we will switch to custom reports, because I think we still have quite a lot of time right now. Right. So the most important section where we are going to spend most of the time as when we are looking at the conversions is where the traffic is coming from. So the basically we are interested in looking at which particular campaigns are doing great, or uh, which particular sources are doing great. We want to see if the Facebook ad is working more better, or if our Google ads are doing more great. So we want to make sure that we understand where we can find those reports, or how we can build those reports customly, so we can still track that information in GA4. So in GA4 we have acquisitions, and in acquisition we only have 3 different reports. One is called acquisition overview. So this is where you will find all the overview data of your acquisition. This will show what kind of where the most traffic is coming from, what is the total revenue. And if you will scroll down, uh, these are uh, these are kind of like shortcuts to the other reports. If you will hit user acquisition, it will take you to the user acquisition reports. If you will hit view traffic acquisition, it will take you to the traffic acquisition. And if you want to see how your Google Ads reports are doing, you can hit view Google Ads campaign. This report right here, this is similar to how we had acquisition and then Google Ads and then accounts. This is the report that is very similar to the one that we are just looking at. To access this Google Ads report, just go to acquisition, acquisition overview, and Google Ads reports. So right now it is showing all the data based on campaigns. You can select a different parameter if you want. You can look at ad group name, text name, query, account name, and all the other things. And on if you will scroll it on the left side, it is showing you all conversion data. You can hit on all conversion. And if you only want to see a specific event, you can select that specific event from here. Right now, it does not give you the option to select any event. It will only show you the conversion events that has been marked as conversion. So if you only want to see purchase event, you can select purchase. This is very similar to how we have the option in goals drop down. So you can actually select purchase event or select goal 1, goal 2, or goal 3. However, in GA4, we don't have goals. Everything is just an event. So you can actually select all the users who has first visited the website. The first visit is a good way to see if your Google Ads is properly linked with your GA4. So the number of clicks that you have, you should have similar number of users visiting to your website. So this is how you know that your GA4 and your Google Ads connection is working fine. There is always going to be some differences because of Apple iOS users or custom browsers or ad blockers, but usually the number is pretty much the same. This is the number of events that are happening on your website. If you will select any kind of events, then it will show you that which particular ad campaign is generating which particular event. So if we want to see that how many users are viewing cart from which particular campaign, that means these are the users who were very close to making a purchase, but they did not make a purchase. So we can see that 462 users did view cart event, 107 did from this campaign, 498 did from this campaign. And using this report, you can actually improve your ad budget or anything that you want. The main difference between users acquisition and traffic acquisition is how Google Analytics 4 measures different sessions. So if you will switch to user acquisition, this is the report based on the first user session. So the user on your website, they can visit through, they can have multiple sessions on your website. They can either come from a mobile application to your website, and then they can cancel the session, and then they can revisit your website from their mobile device or from their laptop, and then they will have more than one different sessions. So this report, this is based on first user session. By default, you can change a default channel grouping to medium source, or campaign, or if any kind of thing that you want to see here. We don't have the option of custom content, custom channel grouping. Right now, we only have the option of default channel grouping. However, they have increased the number of channel grouping that we had in GA4. Previously, I think we only had access to 12 different default channel grouping. However, now we have access to a lot more different channel grouping. I don't think this is the one. GA4. This is the one. Okay, so right now we have access to a lot more channel grouping option. You can set, these are all based on UTM medium parameters. So if you have a UTM underscore medium one set to something, like if you want it to be paid search, you just have to type paid search, and it will populate the custom channel definition with paid search. If you want it to be paid video, just make everything small and paid video, and you can do this with all the UTM parameters that you might have. So if you're tracking Facebook paid social, you can add Facebook paid social, Facebook as your UTM source, and UTM medium as paid social, and it will map that particular transaction under this channel grouping. So this is where you can see all the information based on the first user. However, if you want to see based on all the session that all the users has done on your website, you can switch to traffic acquisition report. And here you can see a similar report. However, the only difference is that this one is based on the first sessions and this is based on all the sessions of that users. So all the users who have done, who has came through different channel grouping are sorted out here. You can map it through source. So this will show you which particular source the more traffic is coming in. Similar to how the universal analytics, we can only add one secondary dimension. So you can add maybe campaign, or you can add a secondary dimension of anything that you want. So let's go to acquisition, and these are all the first ones. Let's switch to session acquisition and select session medium. So these are the sources of that, all these campaigns, all these users, and then the secondary dimension is session medium. So we are only limited to two particular columns. Uh, if you want to add a segment, like in Universal Analytics, we have access to the segment where we can separate out different reports. You do have the segment option. It is just called comparison. And in comparison, we have a lot more options than in Universal Analytics. You can include or exclude a particular user, and you can select a particular dimension. Let's say we want to see all the traffic that is coming from USA. So we can include all the traffic and then hit United States and hit apply. You can only add only 5 comparison right now. You cannot add more than 5 comparison. So now it will filter out the same report based on these two comparisons. So the orange ones are United States users and blue ones are all users. So out of all users, 16,000 came from United States, and all the events that they did on the platform, they can be seen there. You can export to the left and select any different event that you want or any different conversion that you want to look at. If you're just interested in looking at purchase event, you can select purchase, and it will show you that the total number of events that the user did on the website and how many purchase event they made through that particular transaction. All right, so this is mostly where you are going to spend a lot of your time. And a better option of working with this report is building a custom report. So let's just spend some minutes on how we can build a custom report. In custom report, you do have different options. Let me switch to a different account because that one, this will let us build a custom report. So you have option to either start with the built-in templates that Google Analytics 4 provides, or you can build your own templates. You might see that we don't have any e-commerce reports like we used to have a whole different section here for e-commerce one. So you don't get to see any kind of reports. Let's say you want to see the sales performance report where you can see the transaction IDs of all the transaction happening, and you can see all the different parameters of that event. So you don't have this report by default. However, you can build that report from here. I usually I usually don't like this work from black template. You can actually select one of the templates and then work from there. So if you want to build an e-commerce report, you already have an e-commerce template. You can select that one. Okay. All right. So this is how your custom report templates looks like. There are 3 things to understand. One is this variable column, then there is a tab setting columns, and then there is an output of the report that you have built. So anything that you're looking at on this report here, this is coming from this tab settings option. So all these rows, source and medium, they are being generated from this source and medium, and all of these columns which have metrics in them, they are being created from this values column. And if you want to add anything into this report, it has to be either in value or either in the row section. However, if you want to add anything inside this tab setting, you have to import that thing inside the variable first. So it is like you do have access to all the variables. However, if any variable that you want to use into this report, you have to first import that into the variable section. Once the variable is here, then you can import the variable into the tab section just by dragging and dropping it. So let's say if you want to create a segment where you only want to see a USA audience. So what this will do is that this will segment all of this report based on US citizens and all the things that they are doing on the website. So this is how you can build a custom report by default. So let's see if we want to build a similar report to this one where we have transaction ID, revenue, tax, shipping, amount, refund, and quantity that we have solved. So the first thing we need to do is bring all of those dimension into this report. So then the dimensions we are looking for are transaction IDs. You can search for that. We only need the transaction ID. We actually don't need anything else because the only row is this transaction ID and then the other ones are just matrices. So dimension is anything on which you cannot do any kind of mathematical operation, and matrix is on which you can do any kind of mathematical operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and things like that. So you cannot actually add transaction IDs because it would not make any sense to add two transaction IDs, but adding the revenue of two transactions would make sense. All right. So we imported the dimension of transaction ID and it is here. So what we can do is that we can either drag and drop it here, or we can just click anywhere on this drop section and select the transaction ID. So what it will do is that it will add a third column here with the transaction ID. So in our particular report that we are trying to build, we actually don't need source and medium. So we can remove source and medium from here. And we also need, I think, yeah, all the other information is already here. We just need the quantity one to be here. Okay, so we can remove source and we can also remove medium. You can also see that when I added the transaction ID, the transaction ID was not set. The reason for transaction ID being not set here for 46,493 users is that these users did not make any transaction to the website. Therefore, they do not have a transaction ID. So what we can do is that we can add a filter at the very bottom of the page, and we can filter out all the users which did not make any transaction. So we can select a transaction and we can set the filter to exclude all the transactions where transactions are not greater than 0 and things like that. So with the transaction selected, we can select a match time. So we only want to see the transaction where the transaction number is greater than 0. So what this will do is that it will remove all the transactions where the revenue was not generated, and now it will show us all the transaction IDs and how many conversions they had, how many revenue that we saw, and things like that. All right, so this is the report that we were trying to build, which is similar to the other one. You can see that we have a segment here, so therefore it has broke down the report based on two segments. So this is all the US users and these are all the total users that we are looking at right now. We don't want to see the segments, so I'm going to remove the segments for now. So we can only see the total number of transactions and then total number of revenue generated by those transactions. By default, it is showing us 10 rows. You can select show more rows and go to how many numbers that you want. You can add more rows here and it will show you more data. So any custom report is built on the same principle. You have some rows, then you have all the matrices that you want to see. Now, let's say you also want to see which particular source is generating more revenue. So the first thing you need to do is import the source parameter into the dimensions from variable, and then you can add that source into the tab settings. So just hit the plus icon and search for source. Let's select source and medium both. So now we have source and medium here, and we can use that in our custom report. So you can add source and medium into this transaction ID. All right, so now it is showing you that this transaction came in from Google Organic, this transaction came in from Google Organic, this came from Google PPC. Now let's say we only want to see all the transactions which came from Google PPC, Google CPC. So we can create another filter for that. We can add a source and matrix filter, and we can set it to exactly matches. And if a parameter already exists, it will start showing you the hints for that under the filter. So we only want to see all the traffic that is coming from Google CPC and making a transaction. So therefore, we have two filters. So now this report will only show us who the traffic that is coming from Google CPC and has made a transaction on your website. So these are all the traffic that are coming to the platform, and this is all the revenue that they had generated on the website. So this is how you build custom reports. You can build any kind of report that you want. You can add any other metrics that you want. You can, if let's say you want to see which country the user is coming in, you can simply drop the country parameter and you can see which particular country is generating how much revenue for you. And if you, right now, all the ones are from USA. All right, so this is the main idea of working with custom built reports. You have different kind of reports. The other important one is called path exploration. So let's just switch to that one. So we can also see how you can build a path exploration report inside Google Analytics 4. Google Analytics 4's paths are different because these are not built on page views and these are built on events. So it is important to understand how page path reports work here. It did not switch. All right, let's see. When you are on the page, you can hit start over and it will ask you either the starting point or the ending point of the page. So let's say you are trying to build a report where you want to see how many users are going to a 404 page. Let's say you have a 404 page on your website somewhere and you want to see where the page is coming from. And you are trying to figure out where that page not found is on your website because you are trying to improve the website. So we are we are actually looking at the endpoint and we are looking for a page title and screen name. So page title and screen name are something that are by default here. I think it should be 404 or page not found. Page unavailable. So let's say you want to see where this page unavailable is coming in. Okay, we don't have access to that. We can build a custom report in this one. When working with DemoStore, they don't give us access to all the reporting API. So we can use this one to build a path exploration report. You can either start from a template report or you can build your own just by switching from this technique variable. So when you will visit this report, it will show you some paths. So everything starts from a session start event, and then there is a page view event and session start event. If you don't want to see this session start event again, so these are the users who came to the website, who did one page view event and then they left the website. They didn't do anything. And let's say we don't want to see the session start event. We only are interested in the events that happened from this one. So we can either exclude it from all parts or we can exclude it from the selected part. So what it will do is that it will remove the second session start, and now it will not show us the session start event anymore. So all these users who did a page view event, they did not do anything else on the website. So you can either go from here or you can start from a particular event where you want to go from. So let's say in this one, we are trying to find 404 pages or a particular page where a user went to and that did not had anything on the website. Can we see if it is 404 here? Yeah, so these are the 404 pages on the website. And let's say we want to see where these 404 pages are being generated right now. So right now it says that this 404 page, this is the 404 page came in, and this one came after the user went to this particular page. Or if the user was on this one, then they went to this page. So what we can do is that we can simply go to this page, or uh, we can go to this page and trying to find where the user is clicking on, which is generating this page, and then we can improve the page quality of however you want. However, if you are looking at an e-commerce website and you want to see purchase event and you want to track back where the purchase events are coming from, you can also do that using building the same analysis. You can uh, create a starting point for any event. Let's say we want to see, let's do an ending point. Let's say we want to see how many users signed up to the website. And before signing up to the website, what was their last event? So before signing up, 9 users did this set user ID. This is where we are assigning a user ID to the users who are doing a sign up event. And all of them came from this page view event, and before that they came from this outbound click event. Instead of looking at the page view event, you can actually see which particular page they came from. This will also help you understand which page it was which generated this user ID. So users were on this page before they signed up to the website. So you can use a page exploration report to understand how the user is behaving or how your website is working on. These are the only two reports that you are going to spend most of your time with. Either it is freeform, page path, or funnel exploration. Funnel ones are very similar to how you had reports in Universal Analytics, similar to this shopping behavior, where you can see a drop down of all the events from all session, view product, add to cart, checkout, and transaction ones. So you can build a similar report to this one in GA4. You can switch from path exploration to funnel exploration, and then you can add more steps. You can see this step icon. You can hit edit, and let's say you want to track all the events which are. We want to start with the session start event. So session start is the first event of the user. So let's say we want to start from here, and next we want to see how many users did add to cart. And the last one is we want to see, let's say, how many users actually made a purchase to the website. You can hit apply, and what it will do is that it will build that report here. So all the events that follows this criteria, they are, you can see that report here. So all these 101K users did a session start, out of which 5.8 did add to cart, and then only this much users bought the product. You can see the abandonment rate here. There is one more option which is creating an open funnel. So right now these are the events which are directly or indirectly followed by next event. However, you can create an open funnel. What it will do is that it will look at all the events that are fired on the website for add to cart or purchase event, and then it will include all of the events here. If you want to add one more event, let's say checkout one, you can click on three dots and hit add a step above, and then you can add a new event here, let's say checkout. Hit apply. So now what it will do is that it will add one more step into the same funnel, and you can keep on adding more step if you want. And if you want to see a different value, if you want to add a different filter here, you can add a different filter. If you want to see a breakdown of the events, you can add a breakdown there. The breakdown is like which particular section is doing how much things. It is similar to segments. However, segment will break down the whole report. However, this one is just going to break down this particular column. So let's say you want to see which particular device is doing uh, how much action on your website. So the desktop users are 100%. So the desktop users are 10% completing this event. Mobile ones are 3.5. Tablets are 3.4, and smart TVs are 0. So you can see a breakdown of all the events here. You can also export the data from this GA4 to Google Data Studio and build a better report there. However, if you only want to work with GA4, you can build any custom report. The other important tab is monetization. This is where you are going to see your e-commerce purchases that are happening on your website. So anything that happens as an enhanced e-commerce event, that will be registered here under the e-commerce purchases. This does not show much information, only the name of the items and any items parameter that you are sending back to GA4, like item brand, category, ID, and all the events based on that. If this report is sufficient for you, you can work with this. However, you can build a similar report in Explore tab. You can add this item ID as a dimension and then build your own report from there. I think the only report we missed were our pages and screens. Pages and screens are your page view reports that you used to have in Google Analytics. It's very much like behavior and then site content and all pages one. So this is the report that you get by default. You can change the report from page title to page path and query. Then it will show you all the page paths and all the query elements that it had. Anything that was in the question mark with the question mark. So this is how you can see all the reports. However, if you want to see a landing page report like this one, where you can only see the user who has landed on your website, what you can do is that you can scroll all the way to the left, and instead of all events, you can search for session start event, because session start is the first event that fires on the website. And on whatever page this event is going to fire, that will be the first page on which the user has landed. So this is kind of like the landing page report of your website. Any event reports, they are under events, and anything that you have marked as a conversion, they will be inside the conversion reports. There are two different reports for events. One is a generic one where you can see all the data of a particular event, how many users are there, how many revenue that particular event is generating. And if you will select any event, that will open a more detailed report of that particular event. So any custom dimensions that you are sending with this event, they will show up here. So if you had any custom dimensions, so they are sending some custom dimensions such as page title, page location, page referral, session keyword, session content. So anything that is being sent under custom dimension and that is attached with any event, they will show up on the same report here. So yeah, I think we don't have much time left. We have roughly 12 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can ask. Any demographic reports you can find under here, and any tech report. These are very similar to universal analytics. I don't think they need much explanations. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask.
Okay. Let me go back here. Hold on. Just a sec, please.
Yeah, Hassan, just get ready because the question rain is about to come.
Sorry.
So I have here a situation where I revised my tagging for a specific website like every single day in almost 2 weeks, and I am pretty sure that the purchase event fires only once, and it triggers the associated tags only once too. But still, I can see, for example, GA4 and UA has one total number of purchases, and Google Ads shows me a different number of the conversions. But I am pretty sure that the tags are being fired only once. So how can I explain that? Which data should I trust in this case?
You should always rely on Google Ads conversion tag. You should not import GA4 conversions to Google Ads and then count that as a conversion. If you will go to advertising section, you have uh, you can see different attribution models. The main difference that you can be seeing is due to the attribution model, because some ads in Google Ads are a last click model and or data driven model. However, in GA4 you can actually compare different kind of models only for Google Ads. This feature is not available for any other kind of ads like Facebook or other ones. So you can actually see different kind of data models that you have. Like let's say you can compare last first click model with your data driven model, and it will show you how many conversions are happening. So based on first click model, it will say that let me select a campaign. So that will be easier to. So it says that the main app, it had 36 conversion if you are looking at the first click model. However, if you will follow the data driven model, which the machine learning algorithm thinks that this campaign has attributed in a conversion, then it thinks that 69 conversions has happened due to this campaign. They can be for many reasons, like maybe the user is visiting multiple times to the website, and once they visited from a one particular campaign, then they visited to a different campaign. Let's say you have a remarketing campaign from Facebook and you have initial campaign from Google Ads. So what they will do is that due to different attribution model, you can see a difference between the number of conversions. But this is a good way to see a comparison of which attribution model is working fine for you. I always tend to drive more towards data driven, because the more information you are providing back to GA4, it can make better predictions on which actual conversion came from which campaign. However, yes, if you are working with Google Ads, I will highly recommend working with its own conversion tag, and always enable enhanced conversion and send user data back to the GA4. Because at the time of conversion, you have email address, phone number, first name, last name. You can create a user variable in Google Tag Manager and send that user information back to Google Ads. However, if you are working with uh, GA4 and server-side tracking, you can actually build a server-side. You can send user data from there. this is a variable where you can provide user data and send it to Google Ads. So it will know exactly where which user is making a conversion and helps you understand more about that. But yeah, there is always going to be a difference based on the attribution model.
Okay. And my next question was right just about that. If, for example, if I am advertising in multi-channels, um, which attribution model should I use to every single one of them? For example, to make that in the end that the numbers like match in a way, you know. For example, if I in the end I can see GA4 tells me that I have 20 conversions, but then in all the other advertising platforms I have a total different number. How can I, for example, for instance, try to keep them very similar? It's just changing the attribution model.
Not really. That is a difficult thing for us to do, because what happens is that if we are using different channels, let's say we have three different channels. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Google Ads, and the user came from Facebook ads, and then they went to the Twitter ads, and then they also came back to the website through Google Ads. So what is happening is that Facebook is dropping their own cookie, Facebook Click ID, Google is dropping its own cookie, GCL ID, and Twitter is dropping its own cookie. So now when the conversion event fires, it has all of those three cookies, and now it is going to send the conversion back to all the three platforms. So Facebook is going to think that, oh wow, oh, I also made a conversion. Google will say, I also made a conversion. Twitter will also say that I also made a conversion. However, in reality, there was just one conversion, but all the click IDs were present at that point. Therefore, they created that thing that so in if you will add the all conversions on different ad platforms, you will see that there were three conversions, but Google Analytics is saying that there was actually one conversion, and there is actually one conversion. There is no way around it. We can reduce this by closing down the window. By default, I think in Facebook we have 7-day attribution window. So we can reduce the window down to 1 day. So if the user is coming from Facebook and making a conversion on the same day, then that will be counted as a conversion. However, if they are visiting the next day, that will not be counted as a conversion. But what happens is that if we will reduce the conversion, most of the time the number of conversions drastically decreases on Facebook ads, which scares the digital marketing person, whoever is managing the ads. So there is just no way around this one. This attribution model that we are looking at right now, this only works with Google Ads. This does not work with any other kind of campaign. But yeah, soon they said that this will be available for all the campaigns that we are running on our website, for Facebook, Twitter ads, anything that is coming with the UTM. It should be available probably by next month or so. But yeah, for there is no particular solution for this problem. You can show them the same report that we have conversions on here. Usually, I tend to rely more on Google Analytics in order to understand what kind of conversion is happening from. So you can add a source and medium here, session source, and it will show you that where exactly the conversions are coming from, and then you can rely on these ones more than the other ones.
Okay. So for in which attribution model you would recommend for that case?
I
Last.
would recommend working with data-driven model. This is not, you can see conversions here. The main reason working with data-driven is that it takes accounts of all the different sessions. Let's say the Facebook user came onto the website and it spent 20 minutes, but the Google one came in and spent 60 minutes and then actually made the conversion. So the algorithm will decide that the Google one has uh, more importance in this particular conversion. So I usually tend to drive more towards data driven. But yeah, most of the clients have a last click enabled for them. So most of them are using the last click.
Okay, so the default attribution model then on GA4. Um, okay, let me see here. What else? Here. How can I define the necessary custom events and dimensions on a website? Is there any type of criteria to do it, or some kind of checklist? For example, for lead gen, what should be the main custom dimensions and metrics for this case? Uh, in e-commerce, what should be the custom dimensions and main metrics for this type of website? And what if the website uses both?
E-commerce and lead generation.
Yes.
Right. So for the e-commerce ones, you have to follow the documentation of this one. So for all the events that are like view item and all the events up to add to cart, they only have one thing in them. That is the e-commerce and items variable. So they have, you just need to send one parameter, which is items, and it should be a list of objects. And if this is there and the name matches with one of the e-commerce event, then it will be counted as an enhanced e-commerce event. You don't need to send any additional parameter with this. However, what I usually try to send is an event ID, which I'm sending back to Facebook Pixel. I also try to send the same event ID back to Google Analytics 4 and an agent variable. So in agent, it is usually Google Tag Manager Web Container or Google Tag Manager Server Container. So when I'm debugging the events, it will tell me that where the event was actually generated from. So let's say you have configured a purchase event on your website, but when you are looking at the reports in Google Analytics 4, you can see that some 90% of the events are coming in and they have a variable called agent, but most of the other events does not. So there is so that's how you can differentiate when you are debugging. However, for custom event, there is no limitation. You can send any kind of name. It just try to keep everything without spaces. Don't add any kind of spaces when you are naming anything, because if you will add white spaces between letters, it will not let you create filters based on that. So just make sure that whenever you are creating a name, the conventions that Google Analytics is following is that everything is small letters, and instead of space there are underscores. So you can follow the same uh, schematics. However, there are no particular restrictions. You can use any kind of thing for custom dimensions and custom naming. Similar thing goes for matrices.
Okay. When it comes to campaign URLs, which are the main UTM keys and values, not values, but the main UTM keys that you use? For example, we use here UTM, the basic UTM source and median, and then the UTM campaign. Is there any other UTM that you would recommend us to use? Or
Yes, you should always use all the 5 ones because these are the 5 which automatically maps.
the five
So
one?
I use UTM source, campaign, term, and the other ones too. I think the content one. So when a traffic is coming from Facebook, this is the URL that I use. In GA4, we have additional one called UTM underscore ID, and then UTM source, UTM medium, UTM campaign, UTM content, and UTM term. Previously, Google Analytics 4 had not enabled UTM terms and content. However, yesterday when I was doing a testing, I saw that UTM content and terms were also working. So I think right now all the 6 UTMs are working fine in GA4, and these are the 5 ones that I use. I will send you a link of.
Yeah, I was about to ask this.
Yeah, great. Matheus, I believe we run out of time here with Hassan today. I know you might have other questions, so if you please can send me the list of questions you still have, I can arrange another time with Hassan so he can, go through these, whatever you have as doubt, and, cover another point. Is it okay?
Okay.
Cool. Well, Hassan, I just have to thank you for this moment with you. I will follow up this with an email regarding next steps for us in terms of another partnership and another training session. Okay. Is it possible for you to send us any material of whatever you have presented to us here?
I have already shared both of the things, the Google Analytics sheets as well as the link of that. They are in the chat. You can copy and paste from
All right.
there. They have
All right.
read access right now.
Great. Yeah. Didn't check this one, but let me just check this list. All right. Well, other than that, team, thank you very much for being here and to make the effort for being the training. Hassan, again, thank you very much for your time. It was incredibly insightful, every knowledge shared here. And as I said, we're going to be doing, sorry, Matheus, yeah, there is no time for that. we're gonna do another session with you. So just I made some questions through email for you. Whenever you can answer me, it would be great. Okay.
Yeah, sure. That sounds perfect. There is one more question, but I think we don't have
Okay.
that. All right. So
That question just developed 20 questions in Matt's brain.